Mere Conservatism.
Okay, checking back in with David, who is in quarantine, David Perry, and I'm Cleve Walker, and this is Mere Conservatism. David, how are you feeling?
I'm good, man. I was in quarantine. I just got out today.
Good.
And I'm happy because I got to come home and see my girls and enjoying the company of my wife. So I've missed them a lot the last couple of weeks.
I cannot imagine. So I get a chance to ask you something. Does this give you kind of a different or new perspective on COVID and the way we are handling it now that you've actually, gone through it?
I don't really think so. It doesn't really change my perspective very much. I think what I knew and understood about it is still what I know and understand about it, which is that it affects people in different ways. And some people have very mild cases, which I did. Some people get a little more sick, like my mom and dad did, but still relatively mild. And for a small group of people, it can be pretty severe, and especially if you have extra health issues or age, which, that was always the case. Although, of course, when earlier this year, when the pandemic was starting to spread, we didn't know a whole lot more than we did know. And so it was obviously a good idea to be cautious and to do things like help the people who were especially vulnerable, because we did kind of know that it affected elderly people more.
Okay. Well, I just find it interesting because a lot of the people on our side of the issue who have been critical of the really strict COVID lockdowns and mask mandates, they say that the reason we feel that way is because we've never, experienced it. Therefore, we are underestimating the importance of doing those things. But you're saying basically you see no basic reason to change your position or posture about any of those things.
I think that individuals should be careful and cautious, and
okay.
I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
I don't think that governments should lock down or mandate things. That's always been my position, and I still feel that way. Obviously, it's a very contagious disease that for some people can be very serious, and I think that everybody needs to be careful. That doesn't mean that we need the government mandating things and locking things down. We can do this ourselves.
That's a great way of putting it, David, because this is, of course, the month of Thanksgiving. November is, and most people have already celebrated their Thanksgiving suppers by now. But I have basically decided to look at some of the silver lining issues, the silver lining behind some of the issues that we're facing, because let's face it, all we've been getting is pretty bad news and negative stuff throughout this entire time. And as people of faith, and you're a person of faith and I am, we ought to always be able to see the blessing and the hand of God behind the many things that otherwise look to be just pretty bleak. And I've been thinking there has been a silver lining or two in this pandemic, and one of them, basically, to me, is what you just said. I think I appreciate our civil liberties now more than ever, and I also believe I am more inspired to do battle for those civil liberties in the sense of doing what I can to make sure those liberties are not taken away from us, because that's definitely what's happening in some of the states that are governed by Democratic governors and some cities by mayors. They're literally having their civil liberties taken away.
Yeah, and that's not good. And of course, standing up for your civil liberties doesn't mean that you are reckless or inconsiderate of others or anything like that. There's actually the opposite is the case. The point is that we don't need the government to nanny us. Mm-hmm. That we can do this. We can handle this.
That's what I'm thankful for.
We can be thankful for guidelines. Mm-hmm. We can be thankful for smart people that can give us advice on what to do, and then let us assess our own risk and make our own decisions.
Well, David, I've talked to some other people who are just newly coming to that feeling and the position you just described. They said they did not realize how easy it would be to lose civil liberties, and they did not realize how many people on the progressive side of things literally want to take advantage of this pandemic to do just that. So I am thankful that it seems to be a lot of folks are beginning to wake up to the importance of standing up for civil liberties, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and there are of course right now there are surges pretty much everywhere in the country. And it doesn't matter whether or not you live in Michigan or New York, where things are shut down and everybody's making you wear a mask, or if you live in Georgia or Florida, where in our states, Cleve, I don't know if you realize this, but you can eat in a restaurant even if you're not the governor of the state. You can actually, even if you're not the governor or an elected like Speaker of the House or something like that, you can eat in a restaurant or get your hair done. Not you specifically. I know you're not getting your hair done, Cleve, but
I might get my head slicked down a little bit, and I don't have any hair to worry about.
But we can do this now. There are surges in Georgia and Florida, but guess what? There are also surges in Michigan and New York and California and places who are still locked down. So the way these governments are handling the pandemic is not why there's a surge. There's a surge because it's an infectious disease, and it's that time of year, and there's a surge.
I want to touch on one thing again that you gave me to be thankful for. Again, this pandemic has brought out the hypocrisy of the many people in the progressive side of the Democrat Party who say, do as I say and not as I do. You mentioned Cuomo, who himself, is guilty of that. And he recently had to cancel plans, he said, to have Thanksgiving with his mother because, he was denying that to others. But he didn't do that until his hypocrisy was pointed out. So the hypocrisy of Gavin Newsom and folks like that, the mayor of Chicago and others, I think that's a good thing. We're finally seeing the hypocrisy of those who want to control our lives but don't want to abide by the same rules. So I am thankful that is finally coming out.
Yeah, there are many examples of that. I mean, there's Newsom in California going to dinner. There's Pelosi getting her hair done. There's Lightfoot in Chicago getting her hair done. There is de Blasio in New York City going to the gym after he's closed all the gyms. There's Andrew Cuomo's brother, Chris, who was supposed to be on house arrest, was still going out to go on runs and bike rides and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
and people need to see that.
The list goes on and on.
People need to see that. So I'm thankful because we've been telling them about the double standards, but now I think a lot of folks who are not aware of them are saying, hey, these folks really are demanding a different tier of living and standards than they put on us. And I think that's an important thing. Yeah.
Well, and that's why, these people don't take this seriously. And I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to be cynical like that, but what else can you say when you have somebody like Gavin Newsom do what he did and go to this restaurant inside with a large crowd of people to have a $400 meal? He obviously doesn't take it seriously.
Right.
And the people with him don't take it seriously. The people with him were like health officials for the state of California.
That's right.
So, look, come on. These people are not taking this seriously. It's obvious that they're making a lot of rules and they want themselves to be exempted from.
And it points out also that not only are they not taking it seriously, but their posture of pretending to take it seriously is simply a pretext, again, for being able to gain control over people. That's what it's about.
What it seems like.
Yeah. Well, there's no other explanation for it. Now, another good, to me, a silver lining out of the pandemic, and especially with these leaders you're talking about that are hypocritically shutting down while demanding that they stay free. The Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission has urged the U.S. Supreme Court to halt enforcement of restrictions in New York State, saying that it withholds equal treatment from religious groups. They filed a friend of the court brief with the High Court in support of another application by the Orthodox Jews there who are challenging Governor Andrew Cuomo's initiative. They're saying it's oppressive. It has an unequal effect of policies, and especially on religious groups like the Jews and Southern Baptists, whose faith obliges them to gather corporately for worship. So for me, silver lining, a lot of people of faith are waking up to the fact that the progressives really don't like faith, and they're going to do everything they can to curtail our religious freedom. What do you say?
Well, it is awfully strange that the Jews are being, apparently, it seems like they're being singled out really badly in New York. It's very strange. But yeah, they're meeting in the name of their religion. And they're ignoring a lot of the rules and the mandates. They're using the loopholes that they can to still be able to meet. And this is just one reason why you can illustrate why those things are wrong to do.
Definitely. And again,
not to mention the double standards again of certain groups being given passes to do things if you're rioting or whatever, protesting or rioting. I'm not trying to equate those two things, but those are treated with seemingly different veracity than the religious gatherings.
It's funny you mention that because, again, regarding, to me, the silver lining I was referring to is I think a lot of the people in the faith community are waking up to the attacks on their faith. But Pope Francis recently defended the protest against police brutality in the wake of things like the George Floyd's death. He describes that as a fight for human dignity, but in the book he blasted demonstrations against COVID-19 restrictions, saying that they were just being used as an excuse. And the 83-year-old pontiff says, "You'll never find such people protesting the death of George Floyd or joining a demonstration because there are shanty towns where children lack water or education. They have turned a cultural battle what was in truth an effort to ensure the protection of life." So the Pope has come out in defense of the lockdowns around the world, not just in this country, and against those who would challenge those lockdowns ostensibly for their religious faith. What do you think about that?
The Pope is very disappointing. He's a very disappointing individual. I won't say much more about that. I'm not Catholic, so I believe that our brothers and sisters who are Catholic may have their own feelings about the Pope. Obviously, I disagree with that. I think that if he's saying that these people care about their own selfish things, but not about other people, he is reading a lot into what people are doing. I mean, he's making some assumptions there that he probably isn't really qualified to make. What people think and what people really care about.
Yeah.
So, I obviously I think he's out of line there.
Well, see, but here's the thing, and again, I'm looking at the thing to be thankful for about this. It's not just the Pope. There are leaders in the evangelical and Protestant churches who are taking the same tact. They are very forgiving and encouraging Christians to be involved in protest, like things about the George Floyd killing and other things, but to protest, say, for abortion, or to protest for, say, because you believe the election maybe was mishandled in any way. They're not for that. So I guess I'm saying for the first time, I think a lot of us are realizing in the faith community there is a divide along the sides of the cultural issues. And it's pretty big. I'm beginning to realize that. And I think that's kind of important, that the faith community recognizes there's going to be some choices that have to be made. So,
and here, are you familiar with straw man? Do you know what a straw man is?
Yeah, straw man arguments. I know. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I believe what that it means when you refer to a straw man is if you are in an argument or a debate and you assign a position to your opponent, and then you attack that position. In other words, you come up with an imaginary stance that your opponent may be taking. You just assume it, and then you attack it. And I think that one thing that the Pope is doing, it's very common. It's very common to do this. You see this all the time. Anytime you see somebody say, the same people that say this are also saying that. Well, that might be true in some cases, but that's not, you don't know that. The same people can have a lot of different opinions. And so the straw man there that he's setting up is that people care about their own selfish things and not George Floyd and what happened to him.
Or social justice.
Or the plight of people who may not have food and water and children who need this, that, or whatever. He is creating this imaginary person that only cares about themselves being able to go to Kroger without a mask on. That's all they care about. They don't care about innocent people who are victims of police brutality. I'm not saying that that's George Floyd, but I'm just saying, that's the narrative.
No, I agree. That's a straw man argument.
Or whatever.
Yeah. That's
not a real person. He's just making up a person. It's a straw man, and it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair to say that. It's wrong. When you do things like that, you have to be understanding that people might have nuanced positions and opinions on things. You can say, if you're going to care about X, you should probably also care about Y.
Right.
But you can't just say, hey, because you care about X, I know that you don't care about Y. That's stupid.
That's what they're doing. It's a
straw man.
That's a great point. Another silver lining behind the pandemic, David, I'm talking to more and more people who didn't realize, but there's a global effort to suppress freedoms, and not just in this country, a global effort around the country, and they're using the pandemic to do that. Now, here's a story that really caught my attention. China's communist leader, Xi Jinping, I believe is his name. Anyway, he's calling for countries around the world to accept a global COVID-19 tracking system that would use QR codes in an effort to expedite international travel. Xi has proposed that concept during a virtual G20's leaders meeting that happened just a few days back. And he said this global mechanism would use an electronic barcode that would help determine a traveler's health status and thus determine where they could or could not go. What does that sound like to you?
Well, I don't think that that's just for COVID-19. I'll tell you that now. No, look, Cleve, this disease is rather infectious. But don't you think that a global tracking system for people seems a little extreme for what this disease really is?
A little?
I mean, for most people, and I mean this when I say I am not minimizing how dangerous it can be for some people.
Sure.
But for most people, it is a mild cold.
Yeah.
And so for some people, it is a little bit more uncomfortable than that. A very small percentage of people have to go to the hospital, and then a small percentage of those people die.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But doesn't that seem like an overreaction to the severity of this disease?
It sounds like what it is to me is using this disease, ostensibly concerned about the spread, to simply bring, again, domination and global control over the populace. I see the same spirit that I see in global warming, that so-called global warming. They will do things, and they'll be able to take emergency measures at a global level that will supersede laws and rights because it has to be done. So my point is, I believe that's what we're seeing, and I think that a lot of us have not been as aware that the progressive and the communist governments like China are going to want to use this emergency thing to go ahead and again take away the rights of people. And I just think
there's definitely people we have to know, we have to be aware, we have to operate knowing that there are definitely people that want to do that.
Yeah,
and we can't let our guard down.
Another
because we'll get taken.
Another piece of good news, silver lining, I'm thankful for is even though the elections are, for many of us, not for everybody, but are tainted, and to me have shown definite signs of corruption. Whether or not that will be demonstrated in time enough to actually mount any kind of real legal challenge to it, that remains to be seen. But my point is that what happened in the House of Representatives, and hopefully what will happen in Georgia, there are apparently people who are realizing that the Democratic Party has to be stopped in their efforts to further push this country towards socialism. And I've talked to a growing number of people, David, who are finally beginning to say, oh, so that's what socialism is about. You and David have been talking about that. So I'm beginning to see the difference between what they want as a socialist agenda and what heretofore, we had been following in a more conservative route. What do you think?
Well, I think the Democratic Party is in some trouble. Republicans and conservatives need to keep the pressure on because they have an opportunity. Democrats may have an opportunity to right the ship just a little bit, which, two things. Having the Democrats go away, does not strike me as the worst thing. However, having a Democrat, it's probably not going away. So the better thing would be to have a Democratic Party that isn't nuts. It isn't quite so bent on radically transforming the country. I just think that there's less of a risk to the country if that's the case. And so maybe they will do a good job of getting rid of some of the more radical people in their party, but I'm not sure that they're going to. I think it's going to be a fight for them. I think it's going to be real ugly within the Democratic Party. And you had a lot of Democrats lose their seats because of the perceived socialist agenda, correctly perceived, by the way, of the Democrats.
Well,
I think that it's good for people to see that and that people are waking up to that. But look, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and folks like this are they're very fringy, but they have a very powerful voice inside their party. And I'm very interested to see what the Democrats do about it because they're not going away.
Not at all.
AOC may never lose her seat because of the district that she's in. But is she going to continue to gain prominence and power? I don't know. Well, we'll see. I think that it could definitely be good for the Republicans as far as electorally, for the Democrats to continue down this path and to have this internal struggle that they're dealing with.
I am thankful, though, that there is an internal struggle, and I can only hope that internal struggle increases because the more they fight amongst themselves, the less effective they will be in bringing to pass any agenda that will be as threatening as it could be.
I do wonder sometimes if some of it is political theater. In other words, that the Democrats know that they've got this push and pull inside their party, and so in order to save some of the more moderate Democrats, they're fighting on the outside so that the moderate Democrats can still say that they're moderate. People like what's his name in West Virginia,
the so-called moderate Democrat.
Manchin. Joe Manchin
in
West Virginia, the senator, and he's sparring with the socialists in his party. And I'm wondering, are they doing that so that he has a chance of re-election, or is he doing that because he's really? Is what we're seeing? Is it reality or is it a performance?
You could be right.
I have heard some people say that they're just doing that so that Manchin can get reelected.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that Manchin will actually become a Republican, frankly. But I don't know. We will see.
I just am thankful for any debate between the two parties, but you could be right. It could be just for the benefit of public awareness. Real quickly, David, and you probably have a lot of things to be thankful for, but what are you thankful for? What is the David Perry household thankful for this year that you think maybe all of us should consider?
I have today, and especially this Thanksgiving, I'm super, super thankful for my family and to be back with my little family, my wife, my two girls. And because I've spent the last 2 weeks separated from them, I'm especially thankful for them, and I've missed them so much. And I'm thankful for my extended family as well, because my wife's side of the family, they help take care of them. My mom and dad, they helped take care of me. They gave me a place to stay for the last 2 weeks, which was awesome. So I'm just really thankful for the support system that I have. It's so important. Our family and our church is the building block. We need a support system. The government is not where we need to be leaning when we need help and when we need things. We need to be able to have our family and our faith group.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful that I have that. Not everybody has that. And I think in our country, the emphasis on that, your family and your faith being sort of what you lean on, I think the emphasis on that has been waning. And the government is taking a little bit more of a role there, which I think is a big negative. But I'm very thankful for my family and my church. And I know a lot of people, Cleve. I'm sure that you have as well had a rough year, just with the pandemic and everything that has gone on.
Oh, for sure.
In some ways, it's been a good year, but it has been a difficult year.
Yeah.
And I'm just thankful to the Lord for getting me through it and blessing me in spite of everything that's been going on.
Wow. You just summed up all I'm thankful for. Family, the body of Christ, and also would add friendships in there. I think we found out they're more important than ever before. David,
you're talking about me. You're thankful for me.
I am thankful for you, David. I am.
Don't get mushy, but I know you got to say. I know you're thinking that.
David, if folks would like to hear this entire broadcast again, the quickest and best way to do that.
Definitely check out Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. You can see it on Facebook and also YouTube.
And from David and myself, Cleve, we hope that you and your family have had a great Thanksgiving and are looking forward to a great Christmas. And we look forward to getting together with you again for another edition of Mere Conservatism.